Aurobindo's Ilion. Book 1. The Book of the Herald. Envoy, answered the Laomedontian, voice of Achilles, vain is the offer of peace that sets out with a threat for its prelude. Yet will we hear thee. Arise, who art fleetest of foot in the gateway, thou Thrasymachus, haste. Let the domes of the mansion of Ilus wake to the bruit of the Hellene challenge. Summon Aeneas. Even as the word sank back into stillness, doffing his mantle, started to run at the bidding a swift-footed youth of the Trojans, first in the race and the battle, Thrasymachus, son of Aretus. He in the dawn disappeared into swiftness. Deiphobus, slowly measuring fate with his thoughts in the troubled vasts of his spirit, back through the stir of the city returned to the house of his fathers, taming his mighty stride to the pace infirm of the Argive. But with a god in his feet, Thrasymachus, rapidly running, came to the halls in the youth of the wonderful city by Ilus, built for the joy of the eye. For he rested from war and triumphant, reigned adored by the prostrate nations. Now, when all ended, last of its mortal possessors to walk in its flowering gardens, great Anchises lay in that luminous house of the ancients, soothing his restful age, the far-warring victor Anchises, high Bucolion's son, and the father of Rome by a goddess. Lonely and vagrant once in his boyhood divine upon Ida, white Aphrodite ensnared him, and she loosed her ambrosial girdle, seeking a mortal's love. On the threshold, Thrasymachus halted, looking for servant or guard, but felt only a loneness of slumber, drawing the soul's sight within, away from its life and things human. Soundless, unheeding, the vacant corridors fled into darkness. He, to the shades of the house and the dreams of the echoing rafters, trusted his high-voiced call, and from chambers still dim in their twilight, strong Aeneas, armored and mantled, leonine, striding came, Anchises' son. For the dawn had not found him reposing, but in the night he had left his couch and the clasp of Creusa, rising from sleep at the call of his spirit that turned to the waters, prompted by fate and his mother who guided him, white Aphrodite. Still with the impulse of speed, Thrasymachus greeted Aeneas. Hero Aeneas, swift be thy stride to the Ilion hilltop. Dardanid, haste, for the gods are at work. They have risen with the morning, each from his starry couch, and they labour. Doom, we can see it, glows on their anvils of destiny. Clang we can hear of their hammers. Something they forge there, sitting unknown in the silence eternal. Whether of evil or good, it is they who shall choose who are masters. Calm, unopposed, they are gods, and they work out their iron caprices. Troy is their stage, and Argos their background. We are their puppets. Always our voices are prompted to speech for an end that we know not. Always we think that we drive, but are driven. Action and impulse, yearning and thought are their engines. Our will is their shadow and helper. Now too, deeming he comes with a purpose framed by a mortal, shaft of their will they have shot from the bow of the Grecian leaguer, lashing themselves at his steeds, Talthybius, sent by Achilles. Busy the gods are always, Thrasymachus, son of Aretus, weaving fate on their looms, and yesterday, now, and tomorrow are but the stands they have made with space and time for their timber. Frame but the dance of their shuttle. What eye, unamazed by their workings, ever can pierce where they dwell and uncover their far-stretching purpose? Silent they toil. They are hid in the clouds. They are wrapped with the midnight. Yet to Apollo I pray, the archer friendly to mortals. Yet to the rider on fate I abase myself, wielder of thunder, evil and doom to avert from my fatherland. All night, Morpheus, he who with shadowy hands heaps error and truth upon mortals, stood at my pillow with images. Dreaming I erred like a phantom helpless in Ilion streets, with the fire and the foeman around me. Red was the smoke as it mounted triumphant the housetop of Priam. Clang of the arms of the Greeks was in Troia, and thwarting the clangor voices were crying and calling me over the violent ocean, borne by the winds of the west from a land where Hesperus harbours. Brooding they ceased, for their thoughts grew heavy upon them and voiceless. Then, in a farewell brief and unthought and unconscious of meaning, parting they turned to their tasks, and their lives now close but soon severed, destined to perish even before his perishing nation. Back to his watch at the gate sped Thrasymachus, rapidly running, large of pace and swift, but with eyes absorbed and unseeing, driven like a car of the gods by the whip of his thoughts through the highways, turned to his mighty future, the hero born of a goddess. One was he chosen to ascend into greatness through fall and disaster. Loser of his world by the will of a heaven that seemed ruthless and adverse, founder of a newer and greater world by daring adventure. Now, from the citadel's rise with the townships crowding below it, high towards a pondering of domes and the mystic Palladium climbing, fronted with the morning ray and joined by the winds of the ocean, fate weighed, up Troy's slope strode musing, strong Aeneas. Under him, silent, the slumbering roofs of the city of Ilus dreamed in the light of the dawn. Above watched the citadel, sleepless, lonely and strong, like a goddess white-limbed and bright on a hilltop. Looking far out at the sea and the foe and the prowling of danger, over the brow he mounted and saw the palace of Priam, home of the gods of the earth. Laomedon's marvellous vision, held in the thought that accustomed his will to unearthly achievement, and in the blaze of his spirit, compelling heaven with its greatness, dreamed by the harp of Apollo, a melody caught into marble. Out of his mind it arose like an epic, canto by canto. Each of its halls was a strophe, its chambers lines of an epode, victor chant of Ilion's destiny. Absent he entered, voiceless with thought, the brilliant Megaron crowded with paintings, paved with the splendour of marble, and saw Deiphobus seated, son of the ancient house, by the opulent hearth of his fathers. And at his side, like a shadow, the grey and ominous Argive. Happy of light like a lustrous star when it welcomes the morning, brilliant, beautiful, glamoured with gold and a fillet of gem fire, Paris, plucked from the song and the lyre by the Grecian challenge, came with the joy in his face and his eyes that fate could not alter. Ever a child of the dawn at play near a turn of the sun roads, facing destiny's look with the careless laugh of a comrade, he with his vision of delight and beauty brightening the earth field, passed through its peril and grief on his way to the ambiguous shadow. Last, from her chamber of sleep where she lay in the Ilion mansion, far in the heart of the house, with the deep-bosomed daughters of Priam, noble and tall and erect, in a nimbus of youth and of glory, claiming the world and life as a fief of her strength and her courage, dawned through a doorway that opened to distant murmurs and laughter, capturing the eye like a smile or a sunbeam, Penthesilea. She from the threshold cried to the herald, crossing the marble, regal and fleet, with her voice that was mighty and dire in its sweetness. What with such speed has impelled from the wind-haunted beaches of Troas, herald, thy car, though the sun yet hesitates under the mountains? Comest thou humbler to Troy, Talthybius, now, than thou camest once, when the streams of my east sang low to my ear, not this ocean loud, and I roamed in my mountains uncalled by the voice of Apollo? Ringest thou dulcet-eyed peace? Or, sweeter to Penthesilea, challenge of war, when the spears fall thick on the shields of the fighters, lightly the wheels leap onward, chanting the anthem of Ares, death is at work in his fields, and the heart is enamoured of danger? What, says Odysseus, the baffled Ithacan? What, Agamemnon? Are they then weary of war, who are rapid and bold and triumphant, now that their gods are reluctant? Now victory darts not from heaven, down from the clouds above Ida, directing the luminous legions armed by fate? Now Pallas forgets? Now Poseidon slumbers? Bronze were their throats to the battle like bugles blaring in chorus. Mercy they knew not, but shouted and ravened and ran to the slaughter, eager as hounds when they chase, till a woman met them and stayed them. Loud my war shout rang by Scamander. Herald of Argos, what say the vaunters of Greece to the virgin Penthesilea? High was the Argives' answer, confronting the mighty in Troia. Princes of Pergama, whelps of the lion who roar for the melee, suffer my speech. It shall ring like a spear on the hearts of the mighty. Blame not the herald. His voice is an impulse, an echo, a channel, now for the timbrels of peace, and now for the drums of the battle. And I have come from no cautious strength, from no half-hearted speaker, but from the Thean. All know him. Proud is his soul as his fortunes, swift as his sword, and his spear are the speech and the wrath from his bosom. I am his envoy, herald am I, of the conquering Argives. Has not one heard in the night, when the breezes whisper and shudder, dire, the voice of a lion unsatisfied, gnawed by his hunger, seeking his prey from the gods? For he prowls through the glens of the mountains, errs a dangerous gleam in the woodlands, fatal and silent. So for a while he endures. For a while he seeks and he suffers, patient yet in his terrible grace, as assured of his banquet. But he has lacked too long, and he lifts his head, and to heaven roars in his wonder, incensed, impatiently. Startled, the valleys shrink from the dreadful alarum. The cattle gallop to shelter, arming the herdsmen cry to each other for comfort and courage. So Talthybius spoke, as a harper voicing his prelude touches his strings to a varied music, seeks for a concord. Long his strain he prepares. But one broke in on the speaker. Sweet was his voice like a harp's, though heard in the front of the onset, one of the sons of fate, by the people loved whom he ruined, leader in council and battle, the Priamid, he in his beauty, carelessly walking, who scattered the seeds of titanic disaster. Surely thou dreamedst at night, and awaking thy dreams have not left thee. Hast thou not woven thy words to intimidate children in Argos, sitting alarmed in the shadows, who listen pale to their nurses? Greek, thou art standing in Ilion now, and thou facest her princes. Use not thy words, but thy king's. If friendship their honey-breathed burden, friendship we clasp from Achilles. But challenge outpace with our challenge, meeting the foe ere he moves in his will to the clash of encounter. Such is the way of the Trojans, since Phryx by the Hellespont halting, seated Troy on her hill, with the ocean for comrade and sister. Shaking in wrath his filleted head, Talthybius answered, Princes, ye speak their words who drive you. Thus said Achilles, Rise, Talthybius, meet in her spaces the car of the morning, challenge her courses divine as they bound through the plains of the Troad. Hasten, let not the day wear gold ere thou stand in her ramparts. Herald, charged with my will to a haughty and obstinate nation, speak in the palace of Priam the word of the Phthian Achilles. Freely, and not as his vassal who leads, Agamemnon the Argive, but as a ruler in Hellas, I send thee, king of my nations. Long I have walked apart from the melee of gods in the Troad. Long has my listless spear leaned back on the peace of my tent side, deaf to the talk of the trumpets, the whine of the chariots, speeding, sole with my heart I have lived, unheeding the Hellene murmur, chid when it roared for the hunt, the lion pack of the war god. Day after day I walked at dawn, and in blush of the sunset, far by the call of the seas, and alone with the gods in my dreaming, leaned to the unsatisfied chant of my heart, and the rhythms of ocean, sung to by hopes that were sweet-lipped and vain. For Polyxena's brothers still are the brood of the Titan Laomedon, slain in his greatness, engines of God, unable to bear all the might that they harbour. Or they have chid from their hearts, nor our common humanity binds them. Stay have they none in the gods who approve, giving calmness to mortals. But, like the Titans of old, they have hugged to them grandeur and ruin. Seek then the race self-doomed, the leaders blinded by heaven, not in the agora swept by the winds of debate and the shoutings, lion-voiced, huge of the people. In Troya's high-crested mansion speak out my word to the hero Deiphobus, head of the melee, Paris the racer of doom, and the stubborn strength of Aeneas. Herald of Greece, when thy feet shall be pressed on the gold and the marble, rise in the Ilion Megaron, curb not the cry of the challenge. Thus shalt thou say to them, striking the ground with the staff of defiance, fronting the tempests of war, the insensate, the gamblers with downfall. Princes of Troy, I have sat in your halls, I have slept in your chambers, not in the battle alone, as a warrior glad of his foeman, glad of the strength that mates with his own. In peace we encountered. Marvelling I sat in the halls of my enemies, close to the bosom scarred by the dints of my sword, and the eyes I had seen through the battle. Ate, rejoicing, the food of the East at the tables of Priam, served by the delicatest hands in the world, by Hecuba's daughter. Or with our souls reconciled, in some careless and rapturous midnight, drank of the sweetness of Phrygian wine, admiring your bodies shaped by the gods indeed, and my spirit revolted from hatred. Softening it yearned in its strings to the beauty and joy of its foemen. Yearned from the death that o'ertakes, and the flame that cries, and desires even at the end to save, and even on the verge to deliver Troy, and her wonderful works, and her sons, and her deep-bosomed daughters. Warned by the gods who reveal to the heart what the mind cannot hearken, deaf with its thoughts, I offered you friendship. I offered you bridal, Hellas for comrade, Achilles for brother, the world for enjoyment, won by my spear. And one heard my call, and one turned to my seeking. Why is it then that the war cry sinks not to rest by the Xanthus? We are not voices from Argolis, Lacedaemonian tricksters, splendid and subtle and false. We are speakers of truth. We are Hellenes, men of the Northland, faithful in friendship and noble in anger, strong like our fathers of old. But you answered my truth with evasion, hoping to seize what I will not yield, and you fluttered your people. Long have I waited for wisdom to dawn on your violent natures. Lonely I paced o'er the sands by the thousand-throated waters, praying to Pallas the wise for the doom to swerve from your mansions. Buildings delightful, gracious as rhythms, lyrics in marble, works of the transient gods, and I yearned for the end of the war din, hoping that death might relent to the beautiful sons of the Trojans, far from the cry of the spears, from the speed and the laughter of axles. Heavy upon me like iron, the intolerable yoke of inaction weighed like a load on a runner. The war cry rose by Scamander. Xanthus was crossed on a bridge of the fallen, not by Achilles. Often I stretched out my hand to the spear, for the Trojan beaches rang with the voice of Deiphobus, shouting and slaying the Argives. Often my heart, like an anxious mother, for Greece and her children leaped, for the air was full of the leonine roar of Aeneas. Always the evening fell, or the gods protected the Argives.